Woohoo! And we're live once again on another Tuesday, and I'm doing a solo live today. And I got Bitmo Gillian hanging around here somewhere, but let me get up with our banner for what the topic is. So, the topic today is the yellow brick road to publishing. Which path will you choose? So, essentially, today's episode is dedicated to anybody who's out there who has maybe finished a book and they're trying to figure out, okay, I've written my book, now what? Or maybe you're thinking about writing a book and you're just kind of like, okay, I want to know all the options before I even go through the process of writing my book. I want to know what comes out on the other end. And I have learned a lot of things along the way. And so I figured I would just take this episode and share what I have learned with you. So, okay, I have Bitmo G. She's ready here. Whoop. Okay, so we're going to be like Dorothy and Toto today. So that's a whole thing. I hope I can make it here. So basically, we're going to just go through all the different publishing options and just know these are just sort of the main ones. There's always variations within. So, of course, I can't cover everything in 30 minutes, but I'm just going to try my best at a high level to go through and talk about just the different ones. So, let's get cracking. Okay. So, the first one is traditional publishers, and traditional publishers like the Wizard of Oz. It's like it's those books that we have known all our life. We go to the bookstore, we buy a book, and we read the book. That's traditional publishers, and they're the Penguins and the Scholastics and the Harcourt Press and all those ones that we know and love and we're used to using. And we love those publishers. Those are awesome. And when I sort of was a little kid and I was dreaming of writing a book one day, that was the idea, that I would go to a traditional publisher, until I grew up and I saw how hard it was. Because just like in the Wizard of Oz, in the Emerald City, there's gatekeepers to those traditional publishers. And you think about it and it's like, you get it. There's only so many, they're making a business out of this. So when they take on your book to publish your book for you, they have to make money out of it. That only makes sense. And so therefore, you think of all the people that write books and they go to a traditional publisher and they say, I wrote this great book. Well, you got to have staff to read the books and think about it. And then, of course, go out and actually, publish the book and get it up to all the different places. So traditional publishing is really, really hard. And they have to have gatekeepers. And those gatekeepers keep people like me from going out and just giving them my manuscript and collecting my advance and, sitting back. And maybe I've only written the first 3 chapters or something along that lines. So the gatekeepers need a helper, and that's usually a literary agent. And so most people, if they want to go that route, that's the first step. You don't just go to Penguin and say, hey, I got a terrific book. You find a literary agent, and the literary agent gets to work for you. And of course, however they get paid, who knows? I haven't even worked with a literary agent, so I don't know how they get paid, if it's commission or if it's upfront or if they're all different. But essentially, you would pitch to the literary agent, and you might have to go through several before that somebody will take you on. And then they're going to go to the publishers and knock on the door on your behalf and say, hey, I got this fabulous book. So that's how traditional publishers work. Now, for the most part, I have to tell you that that's probably very, very, very few of us ever make that step. But when you do, it really pays off. And so one of the ones that like really comes to mind when I think of a great example of a book that went through the traditional publisher has to be the Harry Potter series, because it's like they just made history with so much sales. With this is a phenomenal story, and the story about J.K. Rowling's, that she was like writing in a coffee shop and she had a baby, and all these different stories about how she did it. And yet, if you kind of go back, there's actually more to the story. So I'm not going to go to how she wrote the book. That's a whole other thing. I'm going to just talk about the publishing part of it. So apparently with J.K. Rowling, what she did is she was smart. She knew she needed to get a gatekeeper on her behalf, somebody who would help her, a literary agent. So she applied to different literary agents, and she finally got one that would be willing to work with her. And she actually the literary agent went to, Bloomsbury, which is a publisher in the UK, because of course that's where J.K. Rowling is. And they started with just 500 copies. So, like, you think of her books now and it's like, "Oh my god, she's a billionaire." She is literally an author billionaire. But back then, she was an unknown. Nobody knew her. So even though she, like, got the literary agent, she got the publisher, they only went with 500 copies, so they really weren't convinced this was gonna be good, and literally, I can think of the people kinda going in and saying, "Oh, we got a couple books, you wanna give them a shot?" Going to all these different bookstores in England, but of course, it took off. Now, here's kind of an interesting backstory. J.K. Rowling's. Do you ever wonder why she's J.K. Rowling's? Like, why do we not know her name? Her name is Joanne, by the way. It's Joanne Rowling's. And on the eve of publishing, the publisher went, we think we need to make a change to your name. And she was like, what do you mean make a change to my name? And they said, well, we don't think boys will want to buy from a woman. Who knows? That was the time, right? We don't think little boys would want to buy a book written by a woman. So we want it to be vague. So we want you to just do your first initial and your last initial or middle initial. Well, she didn't have a middle name. So she was just J. Rowlings. And it was just like, well, we got to have something a little bit more bunchier. So that she ended up taking her grandmother's name, Kathleen, and that's where the K from came. So J.K. Rowling. So that's the story behind that. But here's another backstory. So it just kind of goes to show you, maybe that's the one sort of con of the traditional publishers. The publishers get to make all the calls. So if they don't want your name on the book at the eve of publishing, you just kind of have to roll with it. So then here was the other thing. We know it as Harry Potter, oh my gosh, the title is going Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. That was not the title in England. So when it first came out in England with those 500 books, it was actually called the Philosopher's Stone. And actually, remember, I went to England once and I actually found a copy in a bookstore and it was like, what? Why does that have a different name? Is it a whole other book? And I grabbed it. I bought it. So it might be worth something. Anyways, when it came to the United States, they didn't think that kids would understand what that meant. Philosopher's Stone, what does that mean? So in the United States, they said, no, change it to sorcerers because, Sorcerer's Apprentice and Mickey Mouse. We get that word here in the United States. But J.K. Rowling was never kind of happy with that. So you lose control. So that's kind of what it is with traditional publishing. If you can get it, of course, the pro is you're going to have like multi-million-dollar deals. And, think of how many books has sold, the series, the movies. She is a billionaire author today because of that book. So traditional publishing is great when you can get it. It does have a few cons, but not many of us have that opportunity. So what's next in line? So we have the Scarecrow, thinking about it, and it's hybrid publishers. Now, what's a hybrid publisher? This is something that's like new to me. I only learned about this like the last year. This was a phrase I'd never heard before. And a hybrid publisher is kind of between a traditional publisher and a self-publisher. And a hybrid publisher, they don't have as many gatekeepers. And what it is that, they're all different. So I can't even say they all work the same. They don't. Each hybrid publisher is different. But usually what happens is you submit your manuscript to them. They decide that they want to work with you. And at that point, it's pay to play. So what you're doing is you are actually going and paying footing the cost of the book, which the nice thing is that they handle the editing and they'll get you a book cover and, they get everything done for you and they get your copies made and, from there, get it out into all the distribution and all the different platforms. So that's the pros. They take care of everything for you. But the con is it can be really, really expensive. So you really have to think it through. And so I wanted to come up with an example of some so is this successful? Does this work for people? Yes, it does work for people. So this is just one hybrid publisher. I have not used them. I don't know anybody who's used them. So it's not a recommendation. I just wanted to get a screenshot, and I feel it's only fair that I show the company that I got the screenshot from. So here's a couple of books that they have done. And one of them in particular is, if I can see close on my screen, I see that they have won Wall Street Journal and New York Times bestsellers. And so you can obviously be very, very successful with these hybrid publishers. Truly, probably just as successful if you went with the traditional. Of course, the con is you're going to have to pony up and pay a lot of money. And so I actually looked at Scribe Media, and I just wanted to look and see, well, what do they charge? Because some people, they don't tell you. So I just went to one that actually did. And they start at 26,000 to publish your book. And that's if they're willing to work with you, of course. They may not, your manuscript may not be up to par or what they feel they want to represent. And then the thing is, kind of thinking of that Scarecrow and really thinking it through, that's just for publishing your book. If you needed extra help, like marketing and all that sort of thing, that's other packages. So there's other packages for that. And in all fairness, they offer a ghostwriting package if you need help writing your book, and even a coaching, like we'll go through and record your book and help you write your book. So they have all sorts of different programs. And I'm sure lots and lots of other hybrid publishers out there do. And I've seen more that are cheaper, and I've seen more that are like way more expensive. So just know that hybrid publishing, that's a lot of money on the author in the beginning to invest in it. And then you have to really do your homework, because if you're going to work with a company, you want to make sure they're not going to go out of business or anything like that. So this is really, really important for you to do your homework and look at contracts and all sorts of stuff. So hybrid publishing, I think it's got great options, but on the other hand, it could be really, really scary. So, you have to really do your homework with that. So then it comes to the next one, which is my favorite by choice, is called self-publishing. And I have these two stories of these two different women because I just thought they were a great example, sort of a yesterday and today. So I don't know if everybody remembers the Beatrice Potter books, the Tale of Peter Rabbit and all those beautiful, beautiful books. I remember, reading when I was a little kid, and then I read to my children when I was a young mother. And I did not know this, that Beatrice Potter actually was a self-published author. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was so excited about this. And so like, this is like the early 1900s. And this is back, I believe it was in England. Yes, it was in England. And what happened was she wrote these tales. She had her tale of Peter Rabbit, and she went to publishers and nobody would publish her because she was a woman. So it was like sort of gender discrimination back in the 1900s, so you just go, wow, imagine being a woman and you couldn't get published, but like, women were trying to get the vote, let alone publish books back then. And so she just went ahead and she just made her own book. So she published 250 copies. She did her own publishing. She did it in like kind of just one color, black and white. She did her own drawings. I don't know if she did her own drawings or she had somebody draw them for her, but I just thought that was so righteous that she did it. So she put out her 250 copies. They did really well, that a publisher actually came back and said, we're going to publish her book, and gave her a publishing deal. They decided they would work with a woman after all. And I believe I wrote my statistics down here. 20,000 copies were sold the first year, which is like amazing. You think about it way back when. And here's kind of the irony. The company that decided to publish her was one of the ones that rejected her in the first place. So it's like, she won. So I thought that was just a beautiful, beautiful tale. And then the second one, this is a woman. So this is kind of fast forward for today, instead of being in the 1900s, we're in the year 2000s. This is Amanda Hocking. And she's just a great sort of rags to riches story, in that here was a woman, this is like 2010. And she had been writing all these books. She writes paranormal fiction, which is kind of like vampires and all that kind of stuff. And she was writing all these books and she would just was prolific writer, book after book after book, and nobody would touch her. She just went to all these different, publishers, the traditional route, the literary agents. She could get nowhere with anybody. And so finally she just went, you know what? I'm just going to take that book, my first book, and I'm going to throw it up on Kindle. And that's all she did. She didn't do print on demand or anything. She just made it a Kindle book. And so she popped it up on Amazon, popped it up on Kindle, and people started buying her books. And she was like, she started with like 9 copies a week, but then it started to roll. And she was like, this is kind of cool. I'm making money now. And so, not a lot, but she was making sales. So she says, maybe I'll do the next one and the next one. And the next thing, she's had 17 books up on Amazon now. And she's actually one of the records of 100. Is it? Yeah, look at my notes. 1 million Kindle Club. She's part of the 1 million Kindle Club that she has sold 1 million books of Kindle, and she's actually a millionaire now. So, and again, had the last laugh. Now she is with a traditional publisher. The traditional publisher offered her, of course, a raving deal, and she's got better looking covers now because this was, I think, her original covers. Now they're very, very classy. But the last laugh again is this is one of the companies that turned her down. Don't want her. So they came back around later and did that for her. So I thought that was just really, really cool that here's these two women, centuries apart, both empowered because of self-publishing. So I love that. So self-publishing, you can go wide. So, sort of like you got to have a lot of heart, like the Tin Man. You can go wide. You have a lot of determined that you want to get your book to a lot of platforms. So what exactly does that mean? Well, it means that you would self-publish using a distributor. And for the most part, you could do it all by yourself to every single platform, but it'd be exhausting. And so you would want to get a self-publishing distribution channel. And one of the biggest ones out there is Ingram Sparks. I have not used it myself, but Ingram Sparks is one. Draft to Digital is another one. There's a bunch of them out there. And what they do is you would upload your manuscript to them, and then they can do paperback, print on demand and paperback, and you can get out to bookstores and libraries, and it can get to Amazon, and it can get to iBooks, and it can go to all those places. And some people love to do this because they feel I want my book to go everywhere. And with you, when you work with, I kind of know Ingram Spark the most, so I'll talk about them. But Draft to Digital, that's another one to look at as well. So you don't just have to do Ingram Spark. But what happens is you actually go in a catalog. So if you work with Ingram Sparks, you go in a catalog. And so libraries and bookstores can order from you, because they see you in the catalog. Does it mean that they'll order your book? Probably not. But you're in the catalog. So, chances are maybe you got a better luck with a library, but bookstores, a lot of bookstores really end up, you need a distributor that's really going out as like an agent and talking to the bookstores for you. So getting into bookstores, you have to think about bookstores only have finite space. And so your book getting into the bookstores could be very, very challenging, but it's always possible. So what's the catch for doing something like this? Well, you have to learn how to use, Ingram Sparks program or Draft to Digital's program and know how to use that. And then there's no cost to actually set up the account, but there is a cost for each book sale. So you have to factor in that you're now losing a little bit of your royalties if you want to go with them, because now you're paying the royalties out to the different bookstores and a royalty to them. I believe it's only like 1% of your retail sales, but that all adds up. So that's something to think about. And then the other thing is when you start trying to stock your book into bookstores, for instance, you have to offer a wholesale discount, or else bookstores and libraries, they don't want to buy from you. So now all of a sudden your royalties are going down. And the scariest thing is that they really require returns. So it's like if the bookstore says, this book is not selling, I want to return it, then you have to give them their money back and you have to pay the shipping, or else you have to say, go ahead, destroy my book and don't send it back. So again, that could be a little scary. That's a lot of things to consider. So if you're going to go this route, I suggest you do a lot of reading and make sure you really understand how everything works before you do it. Now, the last one is my favorite, and that is self publishing with an Amazon exclusive. And what I mean by that is not that you can't have other options later, but I like to just get my books up on Amazon because, hey, what's my motto? Easy peasy. So I like to have my books just go up, be available as Kindle, which is for an ebook, and I like to have a paperback on demand and print on demand. I love print on demand because print on demand means I don't have to stock books in my house. I can order books, I can order author copies, I can have them available, but I don't have to sit here and take orders and like ship them from my website, one at a time. And I've worked with people in the past doing marketing, and they went and did like print runs themselves that they funded, and it was like 5,000, 10,000, 15,000 to have all those books sitting in their house. And then we were doing like sales and going to the post office and shipping one book at a time. And I remember when I was looking at my first book, I went, I don't ever want to do that. I want it all handled by Amazon. And the other thing too is I love Amazon because it just deals with the international. So it's like your book can be like in France and England and, Australia. It can be all over the world. And it's converted in those dollars. And if there's VAT, Amazon deals with it. I used to live in Israel and I had to deal with VAT, and it was like a nightmare. So I just love that Amazon kind of takes care of all that for me. So that's sort of the easy peasy route. And I like that one the best. So I kind of think this, let's see if I got any more slides. I don't. So that's basically it of what I wanted to kind of go through and tell everybody about publishing. And I'm happy to, if anybody has any questions, I'll pop over and see if anybody has any questions. So here we go. Okay, so we have Jeff. So he says, greetings from the front row. Namaste, Jillian. Thank you for always being here with me, Jeff. I really, really appreciate it. So that is brilliant. Thank you. Thank you for being here today. And Jeff says, I don't know why I can't see here today. Hi, Jillian. Please say hello to the man behind the curtain. Devin Whitney. That's a good one. I absolutely like that. And that's actually, Jeff, thank you for saying that because you actually reminded me of a point that I forgot to make. And that's with self-publishing does not mean that you're by yourself. Self-publishing can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. And so, for instance, with me, when I wanted to do my first book, I just went, okay, I knew what I wanted to write, but I needed help with the publishing end. And I literally did not want to spend the time learning how to do the typesetting and the layout and how to use Amazon and all that different stuff. It was just like too much for me. I didn't want to do that. So I asked my husband to learn, and he learned, and Devin was my husband, and he began learning how to publish our books. And then after he published mine, other people started saying, could he help with mine? And so that's kind of what happened. But the thing is that you write the book and you have somebody do the cover for you. That's another person who could be part of your team. Another person of your self-publishing team could be your editor, and your editor is somebody that you work with. We had Lisa DeCo back here a couple weeks ago, and maybe it was just last week, and she was talking about being an editor. We can go hire an editor. We can hire proofreaders. We can hire a graphic artist to do our cover. We can hire somebody who will do our typesetting and our layout. We could hire a book coach because we need some accountability meeting our goals, or we need help with, I don't know what to do with this part. And they can kind of roll up their sleeves and get in there with you. So self-publishing does not mean you're by yourself. What it means is you are in charge of your royalties. You are in charge of where you're publishing, where you're putting your book out to. So, Thanks, Jeff. That just reminded me of all that. So that's good. That's good. Okay. So Jeff says an established, prolific author like Stephen King uses a traditional publisher. Yes, he does. And although I don't have the story handy, but I did actually read a story that Stephen King actually created his own publishing company as well. So that's kind of interesting. And I believe Mark Twain is another person who created his own publishing company. So it's just kind of interesting that people will do that. Louise Hay, I've always loved a lot of Louise Hay stuff. And I don't know if, there's probably a great story behind it. And I don't know that story. So now I'm charging myself to go and learn that story of Louise Hay. But Louise Hay, Hay House Books, that might have been because that was a different genre of books that was maybe not being served by the traditional publishers out there, kind of the you can heal your life and, get your crystals working for you. Like there's just so many kind of like interesting things and that went through Hay House that aren't in traditional publishers. So, I think we see a lot of a lot of publishers kind of going off and doing genres. So there might be a genre of like religious fiction or, something like that. So we can see many, many different publishers doing different things. So not surprising that Stephen King went and made his own publishing company, as did Mark Twain. So that's kind of cool. And Karen says, thank you for sharing, Gillian. I appreciate that. I appreciate that because it's just kind of one of those things. And I know that a lot of people, they get confused. They get confused. And, there's a lot of good people out there. And there's also some people who are not so good. So you always have to do your diligence, do your homework. And if one of the things I love to say to people is when somebody comes out with a new book, always support it, always support people reading books because it never detracts from you. I was talking about this with somebody the other day and we are talking about, giving away too much free stuff and helping people and Kevin D. Turner, I just saw him comment in a post today and he said, it's always good to, it's always good to help other people. It's like, that's just what you do. You help other people. So when somebody publishes a book and I love to help them, I love to cheer them on because it never detracts from me because I just want people to read. I would just have everybody read every single book out there. I think it's so, so important that we support other authors. But the important thing is that if you know somebody who's done a book, ask them how they did it. Get their story. Say, hey, who did you use? Who was your editor? Did you, who did your cover? Did you have a book coach? Were you doing this by yourself? Did you publish on your own on Amazon or did you get somebody to help you? Like find out who other people are using because that's the best way so that when you're ready to publish, you'd say, well, I'm going to go work with this person because, I 5 people told me they just loved working with him or her or whatever. So I think that's really important to just open up that dialogue with people and, you know, be aware. And also to stay aware of, there's different people who will post on the internet and they actually, especially on LinkedIn, and they really do their homework with alerting us to bad book people. And I started keeping a tickler file, just like a little, if I see somebody and they're like, oh my gosh, these people just went into bankruptcy and all their authors got, they all lost their money. It's like, I want to be aware of that because sometimes you'll see that like they pop up and with a new name, but it's like they're the same bad people. So you want to just be aware of who are the good people and who are the not so good people, and just make sure that you stay educated with that. So I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. So Karen, she had said, great information session, great. And then Jeff says, if anybody wants to write a book, I don't know why I can't see today, wants to write a book and self-publish, I highly recommend they talk to Gillian and Doug. Oh, that's really nice, Jeff. Thank you very much. He's just like my best buddy. I just love Jeff. He's my best buddy. So that's it for me today. I just wanted to give this sort of informational I don't know, felt like a class today, didn't it? I don't know. Bitmoji, she likes to have her bit in here. So anyways, I just wanted to tell everybody about all these different things and self-publishing, and I hope that you got some value out of this today. And if you have any questions, please never hesitate to get in touch with me, and I'm always happy to share whatever I learn next. Okay, thanks everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.